Hello and welcome back to Cooking in the Quads. I'm going to be sticking to the theme of breakfast again for this week, and I'm going to show you guys how to work with a food that you might not be comfortable working with. It's got a little bit of a funky texture. If you don't know what it is yet, I'm talking about tofu. It's a great source of protein for vegetarians. It's a complete protein, which means it has all 9 essential amino acids, which are building blocks of protein. And I'm going to show you how to make it kind of like eggs. Work with its texture instead of trying to make it into something else. It's really good, and I hope you like it. Okay, so on to ingredients. You're going to need some cooking oil. I've opted to use avocado oil, some tofu, some mushrooms, an onion, some peppers, some turmeric, garlic and onion powder, and some nutritional yeast. Okay, so the first thing we're going to start off by doing here for cooking this tofu scramble, we're going to cut up our onion. So what I like to do, I just kind of cut it in half, just to get it easier to work with. We won't need that much, so we'll start with just a half. You can cut that in half again. And I'm just going to use a quarter of the onion, because onion's pretty potent, pretty strong tasting. I like it, but I don't need too much in my food. Okay. So then you're just going to kind of want to dice it up into small little pieces, almost like little squares. If you make kind of like slivers like I have here, if you can see that, and then you work across them, they get into little small squares, which best way to have them cook really quick. So I'm going to do this real quick. Try not to lose any fingers. Go across again, get them into these nice little tiny pieces. And there we go. So I'll show you guys what I'm talking about here. Just kind of little pieces. And the reason we're doing the onions first is because onions take a little bit of time to cook all the way through. If you've ever worked with them before, you're kind of looking to have them be almost translucent when you cook them, a little bit see-through. You're going to take some of your cooking oil, just kind of go like 1, 2. 2 little swishes around, get the pan nice and coated a little bit. And then you're going to set the heat to, I think medium will work about well for this. And now we're going to work on the peppers. Because peppers are kind of similar to onions in the way they cook. At least that's what I find working with them. So I'm going to start just by cutting the tops off these. And then I'm going to go across the middle. And the reason I'm going across the middle here and cutting the tops off, this is the easiest way I've found to work with them and get all these like seeds out in the middle parts, all the green little things on top. Kind of like strawberries, you don't like to eat the little green leaves on top. But once you've kind of got them cleaned out a little bit, I'm going to throw these away. And then you're just going to kind of cut them up the same way as onions. You're looking to get those small little pieces so you're making them easier to heat up. You don't want to spend too long making this food, so the faster you can have some of the more difficult things heat up, the quicker you get to eat it. So I'm going to finish cutting this up, and I'll be right back. So I finished cutting up the peppers, so I'm going to throw those in with the onions now. And when you throw those in, you just want to kind of stir them around with the oil and the onions. You kind of want everything to be covered in at least a little bit of oil. Helps stuff not stick to the pan. Helps it cook. And there. Everything's kind of spread out evenly. Getting some temperature. And next we're going to do the same thing we did to the onions and the peppers to the mushrooms. I'll see you in a little bit. Alright, so we finished up cutting up the mushrooms, so we're going to go ahead and add those in with the peppers and onions. Everything's starting to heat up and a little steam smoke going. Just going to stir everything around. You don't want to keep stuff in one place for too long. That's how you kind of burn stuff in your frying pans and whatnot. So just make sure you're moving it around every so often, keeping an eye on it. So that's all set. Now I'm going to move on to cutting up the tofu, and I will show you how to do that. Okay, so moving on to the tofu, I'm going to cut it open, and you're going to notice when you cut open packages of tofu, a little bit of water is going to come out, but you just take your thing and hold it over a sink, drain it out. I'm going to get the rest of it open. And here is a big block of tofu. So, the way I like to cut it up, you kind of work with it like cubes. You go across one way, and I make small but long cuts in it. And then once you go across a whole row, you're going to kind of want to switch it to another side, and then work against the other side. Now you're kind of creating like tall cubes, and how we're going to make them into even smaller ones. Carefully pick it up, put it on its side, and then cut across the width of the tofu. And you'll kind of come out with these cubes here. I'll show you what I mean. I'll bring this over here. This just makes the tofu easier to work with. When we add it to our ingredients, I'm also going to use a spatula on it just to kind of mush it down a little bit. I kind of want the texture and appearance to kind of resemble that of scrambled eggs. So I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so we've added our tofu. So what I'm going to do is just kind of take my spatula and dig into the block of tofu. This is going to break them up a little bit, make them even smaller bits and pieces. Doing this makes it a little bit easier to cook with, because when you work with just square blocks of tofu, you kind of have to watch each side, almost like working with a marshmallow. You don't want one side to get like too burnt or cooked or anything like that. So when you mush it up, it just kind of becomes easier to just kind of work with and flip around like that. So I'll show you how it looks when it's finished. Okay, so we finished mashing up the tofu, and it's got this sort of almost cottage cheese kind of appearance to it right now. And I've kind of just been stirring it with the spatula, just kind of making sure not one thing gets too cooked over the other or anything. And now we're going to move on to those spices. I forgot to mention one we're going to add other than the turmeric, garlic, and onion powder. We're also going to add a little bit of black pepper. Something kind of cool about turmeric here. It's got anti-inflammatory properties. One way to work with that and help it better get absorbed into your body is when you add a little bit of turmeric to something, you add black pepper too. Not exactly sure what it does in the body, but it helps you utilize it better. Thank you, Professor CB, for teaching me that. So we're just going to add a little bit of dash of turmeric, black pepper, garlic, and onion powder. The turmeric is also going to give the eggs almost a yellowish kind of appearance once you, not eggs, tofu. Look at them, I'm already thinking about them because they're starting to look like them. But they're going to give it a yellowish appearance, so that's going to kind of help it look like scrambled eggs. Maybe if you're a visual eater and stuff kind of freaks you out when it looks different. But I'm going to stir this around, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've stirred it around a little bit, and I've been letting it cook and also moving it around just to make sure it's not sticking to the pan. And the next and final ingredient we're going to add is one of my favorites I've picked up this summer. It is nutritional yeast, and just like it sounds, it's yeast, and it's rich in B vitamins, so this is good for vegetarians especially because it's rich in B12, which you get in animal products, such as meat and fish, so it's important to layer that into your diet when you're a vegetarian. So it's also got this sort of cheesy kind of flavor to it, so it kind of makes this like a cheesy egg scramble. It's almost like a deconstructed omelet we got going here with this tofu. But so it says to use 1/4 cup per serving, but I usually just kind of eyeball it and I give it a little shake right on over it. I can show you guys what that looks like. It's Just kind of looks like these fine little grains. It almost looks like shredded Parmesan cheese or something. Smells really good. So once we've added some of that, we're just going to stir it around a little bit more. Now, when you're cooking this, you can go a couple different routes or options. You can choose to cook it until you start seeing some brown edges on the tofu. That's just kind of signaling you're going to get a little bit away from that kind of egg texture. But if that's really what you want with this, you can. Other than that, it's just kind of playing it by ear and sight. I mean, these ingredients can be eaten raw, so there's not really a set time you have to cook them for. It's kind of on personal preference of how you're looking things to feel. So I'm going to go ahead and say probably about, if I had to guess, 5 to 7 minutes once you've added the tofu is how long you should aim to cook for. Probably what I aim for, but again, I just kind of play it by ear. So I've been stirring this around and it's been cooking for a while, so I'm going to go ahead and plate it. Turn the burner off. Always important to make sure your burners are off. Put this right onto my plate. There we go. It smells really good. Alright, so let me show you. Here's our finished product. Tofu scramble with some mushrooms, onions, peppers, spices, and nutritional yeast. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Tofu Scramble. I hope to see you in the next one. Until next time.